In this session, I would like to speak to you about the attributes or the characteristics of a life school facilitator. And it is a joy for me to be able to share this with you because I believe that facilitating the life school must be the most important part of this whole process, apart from the curriculum itself. I want to say to you, if you, or as a facilitator, you must know that your students will be watching you closely. It's not going to be what you say as much as who you are. And so I'd like to walk with you through a couple of attributes that I think will be helpful as you actually lead the school. The first thing that your students will watch is your walk with the Lord. They'll watch whether you maintain good spiritual discipline. They'll watch how you deal with the Word. They'll watch your prayer life. They'll want to know whether you are real or not real. And so I would say to you, as a facilitator, make sure that you engage with the Lord. Make sure that you cultivate an intimacy with God, because that is going to be one of the most important things for you. The second thing is, they will watch how you relate to authority. They'll watch how you relate to the pastor of the church of which they are a part. They'll watch how you relate to others that are maybe in authority over the school, maybe some of the leaders in the church that may be a part of the leadership. They'll also watch how you relate and interact to the curriculum itself. Is there a respect in terms of what the teachers are teaching? Are you really feeling like, man, I can go with this. I know this is the right thing. And there's no doubt that they'll be looking at that. The third thing I want to share with you is they will watch your vision and your passion for mission. There's no way that you can just stand in front of that class and say, I want you to watch these videos and we'll talk about them a little bit, but there's no heart and there's no passion for the unreached. There's no passion for those that don't know Christ. The moment they see that, they are going to be saying, well, why in the world are you the one standing in front of us? They will also watch your heart to reach those that are unreached. And that is a part of the focus of the Life School, is how do we plant churches among unreached towns, villages, people, and areas. And so they'll watch that. They'll want to know whether you have a good knowledge of the unreached. And I would suggest to you today that you make sure that you know what's going on around you. Spend time in research. Spend time to find out who those are that do not know. Spend time to find out where in your area or your country are those that maybe have never heard. And I want to say to you, with the migration of people from around the world to different parts of the world, it is not even difficult anymore to find people that are unreached. But they would want to know whether you have actually taken the time to find out who they are. When it comes to the time of outreach, and in a different session, you will be spoken to about outreaches and what to do in terms of outreaches. But when it comes time for the outreaches, I want to say to you, don't just today make a decision that tomorrow we're going to go and do this outreach down the street there, or in some part of the city. Make sure you have planned them well and make sure that you're focusing on the unreached. Why? Because when you do that, your vision and your mission passion is going to be right there for everybody to see. And that's really important. The fourth thing that they would look at is, what is your commitment to them as students? These are not objects to be trained. The people that sit with you in the class are not just, oh, well, they've come to watch a couple of videos or whatever. You have to be able to say, I'm going to take time to build relationship with them. And I want to say that must be one of the most important things. If ever you're going to train somebody, is to make sure that you've built a relationship. Make sure that you have in your time and in your schedule the time to counsel when counseling is needed. And maybe as I say that, maybe let me just say as well, if you get into a counseling situation that you don't know how to deal with, and you will get into those situations for sure as you go through the curriculum of the life school, then rather find somebody that can help you. Go to the pastor. Go to the pastor's wife. Go to somebody that understands, because some people are going through some things that not all of us can deal with. I have found in my own life that I can counsel in certain areas, and in other areas, I'd rather find somebody that has got maybe more knowledge about one of those aspects. The fifth thing I'd like to share with you, what will these students watch for? What would they look at? They will look at your stewardship. So what do you mean by that? Well, they will look at how committed you are to time. Are you going to be at the class, wherever the school's going to be run, before it starts? Please do me a favor. Don't arrive there after the time. The moment you do that, the whole class will become lax in how they come to class. When they know that you're on time, when they know you're expecting them to be on time, they will see you to be a good steward of time and begin to fall in line with that. And frankly, apart from you being on time, if you're going to be a good steward, make sure that your students are there on time. If they come late, maybe there's one day of grace, but after that there's no grace. Does that make sense? Because I think when we're busy training people to work among unreached, to work among places where the demonic may even be very strong, when we're working there, we better be sure that we have a disciplined life. In your stewardship, they will watch how you look after the equipment that is used to run the school. If you're just going to leave the television set there and it can collect dust and you never think of covering it up, or you never think of locking it away, or etc., your students will become like that. They will look at whether you expect this class to be neat and tidy. And let me tell you, the environment that people are taught in is, if that environment is good, people will be taught well. If you walk into a class, which I have done before, and hear a bunch of papers lying, and there's a whole lot of dust around, and the place just doesn't look good, well, don't be surprised if your students don't look good either. Make sure that you're a good steward of that which God has put in your hand. Will you insist that the students turn in their assignments? In one of the other sessions, you will be talked to about assignments. And maybe I can just say that every time you have watched an hour of video together with your students, you will, as the facilitator, be expected to lead them in a discussion for up to an hour about that session, and then they'll go home to write a page of notes of what they have learned. Those pages of notes are critical when it comes to them graduating and becoming quality church planters in the future. I want to say, make sure that you get those assignments every day, which they have written on the previous time when you gathered together. Say this again to you. It's not what you say, it's what you do that'll make the difference when it comes to leading people and teaching people. The sixth thing I want to say, what would they look at? They will look at your leadership skills. And I guess the biggest part of that is not how wise you are, how clever you are, how slick you are. The biggest part of that actually is, will you lead by example? Will you lead in humility? Will you lead as a servant? Because I tell you, if you operate as a servant, if you lead in that perspective, the students will be drawn to really be a part of this whole process. They'll want to check in your leadership skills. They'd want to make sure, have you set goals and are you meeting those goals? You say, what do you mean goals? Well, we have goals. There's certain times of the week that there are classes. You'll be talked to about that in some of these sessions. But the question is, if you said we are meeting on Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock, that's a goal. If you're going to start changing that, you'll mess up your students. They'll check how quickly or how well you do your outreach planning. How well you've set those goals. I would say to you, tell them way up front what you intend to do, where you want them to go, what we are going to do when we go there. Because the more you can tell them up front, the more they are going to feel like we can plan for and equip or be equipped to be able to go and do that. Another thing that your students will check is whether you communicate clearly what you want them to do, where you want them to work, what you want from them, and the more you can communicate that, the more they will respond in a positive way. And also about our leadership skills, they're going to want to know, do you trust them? They're going to want to know, will you delegate certain things to them and will you leave them to go do it? At the same time, they will want to know that there's a safety net so that if you did delegate something and you could see it was going to fall between the cracks, that you could get in behind them to make sure that it didn't fall between the cracks and make sure that they didn't look bad, but they actually look good. The seventh thing that they will look at, and that they will, when they look at you, they'll check it out, is your walk of faith. I have found this to be one of the biggest challenges in my life. It's great to say we are going to go do this, that, and the other, and then the next moment it is, well, how do we get the doors open? How do we get the transport arranged? Or the big question always in missions, which I think is sometimes a big question, shouldn't be, but how do we get the money to do this? And when I as the leader begin to vacillate, when I as the leader begin to say, oh my goodness, I don't know that we're going to be able to put these resources together, the moment I do that, all the people around me start doing that. And so your walk of faith becomes critical. And I want to say to you, one of the things that the Lord will teach you as you facilitate your school is to walk in faith. And it's a wonderful thing, to say the least. They will watch. When everybody says it cannot be done, then you say, because the Lord told us, it will be done. Does that make sense? And so our faith is not based on just, just a hairy-fairy idea of, well, I think we're going to do this, but rather a word from the Lord. When I know the Lord has said, do this, that, and the other, I start a walk on that road. And let me teach you something about faith quickly. How do you do faith? How do you do vision? The only thing I know to do in that is to take the next step. I have found that the Lord does not give me 5, 6, 7, 10 steps down the road. Why? Because my character will run to the last point the Lord communicated, and I'll forget about everything that He's tried to teach me in the meantime. So the key is, when you walk in faith, is to listen to the Lord and to walk in total obedience to what He says. The last point I want to share with you, that they will watch, is, do you lead a balanced personal and family life? It's amazing the premium that people put on that part of our lives. Does your spouse support you if you are married? Or are you out here doing this thing on your own and she or he is not happy with that? That is a big problem. And that needs to be dealt with, because you can only lead to a certain degree and then miss that. I am not saying that your spouse has to come and do everything that you are doing. I'm saying that spouse has got to be behind you to say, go for it, man. This is what God's told you to do, and I'm happy that you're doing it. And it's amazing when you have that kind of commitment, how things come together in the spiritual realm. If you have children, of which I now have grandkids, but I want to say to you, if your children are not excited about what you're doing, something's wrong. And your students will watch very closely. What is these family ties look like? Your students will watch how much time do you spend at home? How much time do you spend with your people? And if you may be there today and you say, well, you know what, I'm not married, I don't have a family. Well, you do. You still have your own family. How committed are you to them? How committed are you to your mom, your dad, your extended family? Because all of that says something about the character that you're going to minister to these people. I pray the Lord bless you as you lead your school. And I pray you take these 8 points and make sure that they are part of you when you begin to lead the life school.